So this is going to be day 8, I think.
Yes.
And anything we should be talking about before we look at beeps?
Well, I've been continuing to do beeps at night, not the last couple of nights because I wasn't feeling good, but before that. And I think that this square wave that lasts for a long time after 60 minutes works well and has the effect that I was hoping for. And I can tell you that my uh, the there's been a couple of different cases. One where I hear the square wave, probably not from the beginning, and I don't recall anything prior to that. And the other one though is that I do have this recollection of a intermittent, like kind of flashing thoughts, um, for at least like two or three of them. And then I hear the square wave sound. And my interpretation of that is that at some point, the intermittent sounds are enough enough stimulation for something in my brain, my cortex, to get activated and like create like a temporary conscious thoughty experience that then fades when the sound goes away until it wakes me up enough that I can actually hear the sound. So there's like some kind of sensory filter where like I'm not aware of the sound, but I'm aware of something, but it sort of feels intermittent. And I wanna keep doing this to like see if it keeps happening, to sort of have like validation from repetition. But it's very intriguing.
So I guess it's not too surprising to me that you might have some kind of an experience which is more or less time locked or at least in sync with the beep.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that I would have predicted that, but that doesn't surprise me when you report it.
But without hearing the beep. So this is like deep sleep, presumably, and I don't hear the beep. I just have like some kind of like vague, faint thought-ish experience that comes, fades, comes, fade. And then I feel the beep, I hear the beep, and it wakes me up all the way, or whatever, like I don't know exactly at what point I wake up, but initially I wasn't hearing the beep. So one thing that would be interesting to do is experiment with beeps that are longer, like instead of half a second, 1 second, and then see, or something like that, and then see if it makes a difference. But we don't have to do that yet.
So I will make you whatever beeps you want. You tell me what you want and I'll make them for you.
Okay. Well,
The and when. But I would also say that what your reports are not particularly surprising to me. What you just voiced as being surprising isn't surprising to me because I think there's a big difference between what happens in the external world and what happens in experience.
yeah,
And the fact that a beep is going on and you don't experience it,
yeah,
well, I think experiences. I think we're multiprocessors all the way down.
yeah.
And so I think that your cortex can process the beep at some level, and by your cortex, I mean your bag of bones. I don't want to specifically say, but I think Gualtiero's systems can process the beep at a variety of different levels,
Yeah.
and those levels do not have to be all in sync with each other. And this gives an example of that. So when he recognizes the beep, it's not that there's an external beep and he hears it and that's all there is to it. I don't think that's true. I think what happens is that there are vibrations in the air that happen and they vibrate his cochlea and his whatever else whatever else happens in that system, and that spreads out all through his body, brain, body, whatever. And sooner or later, he will recognize that as a conscious experience of the beep. But in between that time, in between when the vibrations begin and the recognition, oh, there's the beep, there's a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is I think the beep is not an instantaneous signal. Even when you're awake, the beep is not an instantaneous signal. The beep is the end of a processing stream that starts some number of milliseconds before you would say you recognize it as a beep. And how many milliseconds that is on the order of hundreds probably. But I've never really tried to analyze that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very fascinated by this, and I want to continue trying this. But it's also a little taxing, I think, like to be woken up like in the middle of your deepest sleep. So I only do it if I feel good enough. Like the last couple of nights, I got some vaccines 2 days ago, and I got two, COVID and shingles. And I don't think I had ever gotten the shingles vaccine. For whatever reason, maybe it was the two together, maybe it was the one was new. It was pretty taxing. It was hard. I got my temperature went up to like 100.5. I was really beat up. And so I thought, oh, it would be interesting to see if when I hear the beeps, I have any kind of awareness of feeling sick, feeling down, feeling tired, feeling exhausted, whatever, feverish. But the answer is no. I've never detected any awareness of any of that when the beep beeped. And it beeped. I did all 6 beeps while I was feeling very sick yesterday. I'm very sick. I mean, not like sick as if it was a full-blown infection, but still I was feeling beat up, and none of it I wasn't aware of any of it when the beep beeped.
Okay. So that's not too surprising to me either. I mean, I think it can seem like I feel shitty all the time, and I probably do feel shitty all the time. But that, it's boring to think about being shitty or to feel shitty, and there's other stuff that can occupy you even while that kind of stuff is going on.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And that, I think we don't know nearly enough about that. I think that's true, what I just said. But I think, we need reports like you're giving right now. I've pretty much finished sampling with a guy who felt he had pain all the time, 100 constant pain, and the beeps almost never caught him in with any kind of pain. And I think it's the same basic deal. There is no doubt something going on in his body pain-wise and in your body shitty feeling-wise that's occurring, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting that before the footlights of your consciousness at many particular moments.
Yes. Yes. So, shall we start with a beep that I found a little more interesting than the others?
I think they're probably all interesting, so I'd say go for number one. But if you want to start with whatever, that's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't spent too much time yet, so hopefully we'll get to that. Okay, so the first one was some of these were like simpler than my typical experiences, just one modality. Maybe because I was sick, I don't know. The first one was a visual experience, diffuse, of a elegant woman in a dress with long hair, light brown hair, and high heels, moving relative to a sports car on a background of people and other stuff. And I don't remember the rest of the details. And that's it.
So is this a seeing into the external world? It's
a video. It was a video.
Okay. So I'm seeing something which is being played on the video.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't remember, I didn't write down if it was my phone or my computer.
Okay.
Oh.
And and I take it that I'm taking in this scene, and what I've described is basically the entire scene, but I'm not zeroing in on any particular aspect of that. Not the woman, not the hair, not the heels, not the sports car, any more than
Yeah.
any other
Yeah.
feature.
The woman is kind of in the center and she's obviously the focus of the video, but I'm sort of taking in the whole scene and of course noticing the woman. But yeah, it's not, it didn't feel like I was specifically seeing the woman as opposed to the rest of the scene
Okay.
or the background of the car. It was more just kind of observing the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there anything more to be said about it? Like, I'm particularly interested in any aspect of it, the color of her hair, the color of the car, the
I don't think so.
okay. So what I got from that is my phone or whatever it is displaying this visual display, and I'm seeing it. And I'm not particularizing any aspect of it. The woman is in the center, and I'm see her in the center, but it's not like I've centered her experientially.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Okay, then I think I'm happy with that. Lauren, happy with that? Okay,
Uh, okay. So the next one is also a visual experience, but it's of text on a phone screen, and it's about a special kind of fabric that was apparently invented that deflects laser laser beams. But I don't remember anything more specific than that. So I was reading this text, and I guess I was experiencing the content more than the words themselves. But there was something visual about it because I was reading the text. It was written there.
so there's clearly something visual about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're experiencing the visual nature of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not experiencing. I'm not. I'm just. I want us to bracket that or be agnostic about that or however you want to describe it. So it could be I'm reading about this fabric with comprehension, and
Yeah.
that's all to be said about my experience.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's a visual thing. These are black and white characters or whatever color characters on the screen, and they're coming in through my retina and being processed by my whatever LGN goes on the way to my visual system. That no doubt is happening. But is any of that in my experience other than I'm reading with understanding?
No, I think that's it. Reading with understanding is a good way to put it. And I was trying to capture that in my description.
So reading with understanding makes it seem like it's more a semantic experience than a particular visual experience. So it's not like I'm noticing the Times New Roman of the text, or I'm interested in the color of the background, or and furthermore, it's not that I have created some parallel understanding of the text. For example, it's not like I am seeing a visual image of a laser shooting at a piece of fabric or something like that, which some people could do, but I'm gathering that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm reading with understanding, and that's basically all that's in my experience.
Yeah. I mean, including the content of what I was reading, at least the concept, the idea of this fabric that deflects laser beams.
And is that separate from what might be called reading with understandings? So reading with understanding is reading with understanding about fabric that
Yeah.
deflects laser beams,
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
opposed to I'm reading with understanding, and at the same time I am contemplating what it means for laser beams to be reflected by fabric or something like that.
No, 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 no. Yeah, it was one thing.
Okay. So I'm reading with understanding about fabric that re deflects or reflects or whatever laser beams.
Yeah. And there was an image below that I looked at at a separate time, and it showed like somebody with this fabric on them, kind of covering them, and then like there was some image of laser beams that were being deflected around this person.
But that was
So
not present at the moment of the beep. That
no,
was
no, no.
before
That
or
was
after or
not
something.
in my experience when the beeper beeped. It was just there was an illustration. It was one of these Facebook things that just pop up in your
In your feed.
in your feed. Yes, feed. Thank you.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay. The next one is that I heard the words "how to" spoken by an Asian man on an Instagram video, and I was seeing the man on the video on a phone screen, and he had a round face and black short hair, but I wasn't focusing on any of these features in particular. This is just some salient features of the man. So there was a auditory component and a visual component to this experience.
And do those seem like separate experiences? Like I hear the words and I see the guy? Or would it be more fair to say, I am watching this video where an Asian guy is saying how to, and if you ask me what the characteristics are, I could say, well, there's the auditory characteristic and there's the visual characteristic.
Yeah, I mean, the second way you put it sounds reasonable.
So it's not like I've zoomed in on the how-to-ness of it. And it's not like I've zoomed in on the black hair, round facedness of it.
No.
It's a fact that there's a round face and black hair and how to. That's descriptively accurate. But I'm not aimed particularly about that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then about how to, is it that I'm aimed at the word that I'm receiving the words how to, or am I receiving the sentence that includes the words how to, like the whole sentence might have been, I'm going to describe how to put this clock together or something, and the beep happened to get at the how to of that sentence.
Yeah, I think I was hearing a whole sentence, but the beep happened at how to, so
So it's not like I have chunkified how to, and the beep caught me in the middle of having chunkified that. It's that I'm processing the sentence and the beep occurs, and because I know Russ is going to ask me when the beep occurred, I'm going to say it occurred at the words how to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right after how to, yeah.
Okay.
Might have overlapped with the sound of two. I don't know.
Yeah.
For sure, but
And that's the kind of question that I think is not possible to answer for the kinds of reasons that we talked about at the beginning today, which is to say the beep is not really a discrete occurrence in your experience. You have to manufacture the beep as your example today sort of elegantly describes, how you have to manufacture the beep out of the raw material of oscillations in the environment. You have to make a beep out of that. It's not like there's a beep that exists separate from Gualtiero. He's got to make the beep. So what I got about this experience is I'm watching a video where a guy is speaking a sentence that includes the word how to, and I'm understanding his sentence, and I am visually seeing the scene, and this stuff is, I'm receiving this, in semantically and visually receptive kind of way. And the beep comes in how to, but it's not like I have made a discrete chunk out of how to, which the beep catches. Without the beep, it would have been more about the sentence than about the words how to.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason that I'm asking those questions is that the same guy that I talked about a minute ago with the pain, and other people as well, but he happens to be one that's recent, they do chunkify sentences. And so he, in response to questioning very similar to what we've just gone through here, he would say, no, I had, the sentence had actually gone past how to, and I was still on how to. I had taken this how to stuff chunk, and I was, I forget what he calls it, I'd latched onto that that expression, even though the words had gone on, the sentence had continued on. I'd latched onto the how to. That's not what you're saying. That's what he's saying. What you're saying is more common. What he's saying is less common.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know about the less common until you ask about it carefully enough to see whether that was what Gualtiero was saying too as well, which in turn looks like it wasn't.
Right.
So I'm good about that. Number 4. Unless Lauren had more to say.
So number 4 was more interesting to me because I was reading the word doing in all caps because the whole piece of text was written in all caps on a computer screen while feeling the echo or the residue of a previous thought. And the previous thought, I remembered what it was about. It was about adding the need for analysis to what was already written on the page. So this was something that I had written in a sort of form about a book project. That was in my experience. I'm just explaining. And so I was revising sort of, I was going through reading what I had written, and as I reached the word doing, I was still like, at least there was some kind of residue or memory or echo, I call it, of the thought that I should add something to the text to the effect that we also need to do analysis of this concept, not just do what was already written there. So there was this visual aspect of seeing the word doing, and also this thought that was related. And I think the thought was had already occurred, but there was still a little bit of a residue to it. And I was going to get to that because, at some point I was going to insert new text. So it was part of the task, that I was assigning myself.
So I'm gathering there are 2 aspects of the experience. There's the seeing of doing, and there's the echoey or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm also gathering that the seeing is more prominent, but I'm not at all sure about that. Is that true?
Yes, it is more prominent, yes.
Okay. And so let's start with the doing portion.
Yeah.
Is the doing portion primarily a visual thing, or primarily I'm reading this capitalized line that has the word doing in it?
Sure. It's part of reading the whole sentence, and this sentence is about, giving an account of a phenomenon. So, yeah, I am reading with comprehension, but it's primarily visual and seeing the word. That word was what I was seeing, what I was reading right before the beep. Yeah, but it was part of a task of revising the text. So there was also this focus on what I might need to add, and I had a thought about that. And that's the second part of the experience.
Okay, so let's stick with the first one first. So there are two. We had two samples today. The second one and this one, in which you are reading something on a screen of some sort.
Mhm.
And the first one, I understood you to be saying, I was reading a sentence about fabric and laser reflection and whatever, and it happened that the words, I forget what the words were now, but you could tell me what the words were, but it wasn't like I chunkified those words.
Yeah, the words. No, the words I don't remember the word, any
Yeah.
specific
So
word.
so actually, I've conflated. And what I just said, I've conflated three samples rather than two. So in the third sample, there were words "how to," but the "how to"
Yeah,
was a part of a sentence.
yes.
And no, so what I'm asking here is whether "doing" is a part of the sentence in the same way that "how to" was part of the sentence.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So and what what I on my understanding of number three was that we ended up that we ended up thinking that this was not so much an auditory experience as a semantic experience. I'm hearing what these guys saying. I'm not particularly paying attention to the auditory characteristics of it. I'm primarily processing what the meaning of the guy's sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely understanding and pressing the meaning, but I'm also seeing the word in this case.
Okay. So this is different from number four is different from number three in the sense that not only am I processing it semantically, understanding what this sentence is, but I'm also visually.
No, I don't think it's different because number three, I was hearing it. So it wasn't visual, it was auditory. The words were spoken. So I was also hearing the sounds. Well, the words, the sounds of the words. And so I think it's analogous, like the way I was hearing the words how to in number three, in this case, I was seeing the word
So the distinction that I want to be as clear about as we can get is whether so I'm accepting that there is visual processing going on here.
doing.
These pixels are falling on my retina and I'm processing them, and I'm seeing the word doing. There's no question about that. And as a process, I am visually processing these words. The question is whether experientially I am noticing the visual characteristics of this processing or noticing the semantic meaning of it. Because I got two processes going on. I'm processing the visual and I'm processing the semantics. The question is whether it's experientially I'm more understanding what these words mean or I am experientially seeing how these words look. Or maybe that's not possible to answer.
Yeah, I mean, to the best of my ability to answer, I would say there's both aspects. There's this seeing of the word itself and processing the meaning or understanding the meaning. It's a meaningful word. It's definitely not just a bunch of shapes on the page. And I'm reading to understand what it says. I mean, I'm actually reading to figure out what to add or change in it. I'm editing, so that's the task. So it definitely requires comprehension.
Okay. So it comes back to the sort of the same thing as we talked about at the beginning about the intermittent beep. The Your bag of bones processes a lot of stuff that you don't experience. So
Mm.
you were processing the intermittent beep enough so that you were having a sort of an on-off think not, think not, think not kind of a process without experiencing it as a beep. Then, sometime later, you experienced it as a beep.
Yes.
And so this is in that same ballpark, at least in the world according to Hurlburt, and that is, I'm processing this word. I'm processing the pixel array on the page, which could be said to be the word doing. Certainly, is the word doing from that perspective. But the question is whether I experience that as a visual processing or I experience it as a semantic understanding, or both, or neither one. It could be that that's what my processing systems are doing, and I'm really paying attention to this echoing of a thought about I got editing to do.
Yeah. I'd say it's certainly has a visual component, but it's also reading, it's got a semantic aspect to it.
Okay. And should we say it? Does that mean? I guess does that mean that this does not have a vocal aspect? So I'm not saying this sentence to myself.
No, I'm not.
Okay. So there's a visual processing aspect that seems like it's somehow present, and there's a semantic processing aspect that seems like it's somehow present.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm even seeing that the word is written in all caps, so that's a visual for sure. Of course, I'm seeing that the whole text is in all caps, not just that word, but yeah, since at that moment I was reading that word, I was seeing the word in all caps.
And would you say that the all capsness is present as a part of your experience?
Yeah.
So, for example, you could be reading another word, and that would be all lowercase. It's a fact that those words are all lowercase, but I'm not processing the all lowercaseness of it. This just seems sort of normal everyday reading.
Yeah, right. Right, because that's what you normally expect. Normal text is lowercase.
Right.
For whatever reason, this form was set up so that part of it, the text would be all caps. And yeah, that's unusual. So,
And so is the unusualness present to you?
no, I wouldn't say that, but I would say that the all capsness was present.
Okay. Okay. So what I've got out of that aspect is I am seeing in all caps and somehow visually processing, which is not just automatic, but somehow present to me, the visual aspect of what I'm reading, while at the same time I'm also understanding it. I'm reading with comprehension, and that's somehow present to me as well. Not in a meta sense, but I am reading this with comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not aimed my experience. I have not particularized or centralized or whatever the capsness of it. It's not like I'm somehow, wow, this is in all caps. That is not part of it. It is in all caps. And I'm no doubt processing the unusual aspect of the all caps, but I'm not making that in any sense the figure of my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair characterization.
And then there's the echo.
Yes.
And I'm worried that I've sort of conflated this with the beginning conversation. Was this a series of echoes or just one echo?
Wow.
One echo.
Yeah,
And
I mean, echo is my word for trying to capture this sense that the main thrust of the thought has already passed and it's still being kind of held either from there being like a buffer, like a memory buffer that still holds some of that signal, or in this case, I'd say maybe it was actively, or at least to some degree, actively maintained because I needed to get to that task. Like I needed to execute that thought. You know, that thought was about something that I was supposed to do. So
so
for me to
this,
do it, it needs to be remembered.
so some of the previous echoes have been sort of mindless, I guess you could say. They were just
Mhm.
they're they're there, but receding, and who cares, kind of a deal.
Yeah, it's fading and can be forgotten, no problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this one seems like it's fading, but I'm not going to let it fade. I'm going
Yeah, I mean, or at
to,
least like I shouldn't let it fade. I need to get to it.
okay.
Yeah.
And I would say the words that you described this echo to my ear were different from the words that you described other echoes. I think you
Mhm.
said this time that I was feeling the residue, which I don't, which seemed like new words to me to describe this phenomenon.
Mhm.
And maybe this is what we're. So I don't think you said you'd felt this. It says in previous echoes. I don't believe you've described it as a feeling. Maybe I'm mistaken about that, but it's like they were mostly cognitive echoes, where this was somehow.
Well, this is the word feeling I'm using here is just in a very general sense to mean awareness. You know, I was aware of it. And so it was, yeah, it was definitely, you know, what I would call cognitive, you know, a cognitive experience.
Okay.
But it had a directive aspect to it, or, you know, imperative aspect. Like it's something I need to do myself, not just an observation or a, you know, like a generic thought about something. It's not like a belief. It's more like a command, you know, like
Do
I need to do this.
do this.
You know.
Okay. Then I think I'm good about that.
Good. Then the next one has a similar structure. It happened only a few minutes later, and I was still editing the same document. In fact, the same part of the same document. And I was shifting attention between the word control in all caps and the words parenthesis of body and you know and the parenthesis also in all caps because the whole text was in all caps, while trying to think about whether the word control occurs elsewhere in the list that I was reading, and therefore the words parenthesis of body end of the parenthesis is a needed qualifier to distinguish this from the other type of control. This was not verbalized. It wasn't inner speech. It was just a uh, attempt to think about the structure of how the these words, you know, control of body, relate to another possible occurrence of the word control that has a different qualifier elsewhere in the text. So it's a and symbolized thought, but it pertains to what I was reading, and because of that, my attention was shifting between the word control and the word of body in parenthesis, which were next to each other.
So when you say shifting, do you mean shifting back and forth? Control of body, control of body, control of body.
Yeah, there was some, I think there was some back and forth, like even my eyes went back and forth between those words
Okay.
a couple times.
And I gather the meaning, the semantics of it, the task of is something like, do I need the of body here because of other uses of the word control elsewhere in the body?
Yes. Well, the contrast would have been control of body, control of the stream of consciousness. So those are the two types of control.
Okay.
But the second one I wasn't reading, and it was somewhere else in the list, so that's not what I was focusing on
So
at that
do I
point.
need it here? Do I need the
Yeah,
parenthesized of body here?
yeah, to qualify the kind of control that I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
And so I think I'm understanding what's happening here. I'm editing, I'm looking at a body in parentheses and deciding whether I need it or not by comparison to the other usage of control elsewhere in the document.
yeah.
And the question is, how specific is is this cognitive decision making going on? Like at one end, it could be it could be, we could state it in words. Do I need parenthesis of body here? Question mark, unquote. That would be the statement of words. Or there could be a thought that would be every bit as specific as that, but not in words. Or it could be at some lesser level of specificity of, do I really need this? You kind of thought about that?
I'm not sh sure I understand the difference there. Can you say it again?
So in the background paragraph that you gave, you said that the alternative was of consciousness. There was control of body and control of consciousness, or stream of consciousness,
Mm-hmm,
if I
mm-hmm.
understood you correctly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So a very specific a very specific verbalized thought would be, do I need parenthesis of body by comparison to parenthesis of stream of consciousness,
Mm-hmm,
unquote. That would be in words.
mm-hmm.
Or unsymbolized, you could have the same level of specificity, but without. So it could be, and the first would be of body, and the second would be of the stream of consciousness. But the entire specific thought would be, I'm comparing this one to that one. Or there could be some cognitive analysis which isn't that specific. It's like, I'm looking at that and it just doesn't look right, or it's not right. And the background would be, well, I got the stream of
Yeah,
consciousness stuff, but
yeah.
that's not.
Okay, yeah. I understand. It's it's closer to the second kind of description that you gave. It was um it was more of an effort to connect this occurrence of control, the word control followed by this qualifier to possibly another one. Like I was asking myself a question and it was still fairly vague. And it was actually like more like an effort to formulate a question in my head than, a definite comparison. There was definitely not, the other part of the comparison was not in my experience at all. The other occurrence of, control of the stream of consciousness, I
Okay.
wasn't thinking about that.
So it's a cognitive mulling or consideration or something like that. Where there
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be any question about that.
Yeah, I was asking
There-
myself, or I was trying to ask myself, is this of body there as a qualifier because it's needed, because I'm using the same word control somewhere else in the same list, and it needs to be qualified in two different ways, something like that. But it was sort of just the beginning of asking that question. It
Okay,
wasn't fully formulated.
okay, I think I got it.
Yeah.
And 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 what I would say as a sort of an aside, I would say I think there's a range of specificity of unsymbolized thinking, and this is not at the most specified end of that.
No, because
So,
I feel like I hadn't even formulated a full thought yet. It was sort of starting to try to formulate it.
so I would probably call this cognitive awareness rather than unsymbolized thinking, because I like to reserve unsymbolized thinking for a pretty specific end of it.
Hmm.
But that's a rhetorical thing that comes from my history, I think, and not
Yeah.
Gualtiero's experience. I'm sensitive to the term unsymbolized thinking because most people, when they hear me talk about unsymbolized thinking, think about something like a gist, and that's not what unsymbolized thinking is. Unsymbolized thinking is very specific. What you're
Yeah.
talking about is more than a gist, but less than unsymbolized thinking. So I call that like cognitive awareness or something like that. But
Sure.
the it's not of particular interest to me to distinguish between, as if it was possible to distinguish between unsymbolized thinking and cognitive awareness in a reliable sense. I don't think that's probably possible.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 And my aside is that I find very fascinating these glimpses of what really are thought or cognitive processes occurring in while I'm also reading or hearing something. And yeah, and it's part of an intellectual exercise in this case, right? Like I'm editing a piece of writing, and so I have to read it, but I also have to think about it while I read it. And the beep helps me kind of crystallize these moments where there's some thought going on in parallel to the reading so that I can figure out if I have to change something.
And I think that's right. And I think we are multiprocessors. I believe I've said that repeatedly here, and I think we are multiprocessors, and this is an example of that. And I would also say it's quite difficult to notice this kind of multiprocessing in an armchair introspection environment. You need something like a beep
Yeah.
to to notice to notice that it's happening.
Yeah.
And I think the description that we have given is a pretty high quality description. It's not perfect. I don't think we need to get it perfect, but I'm reading with comprehension. I know that I'm editing, looking at the words, and at the same time I'm somehow processing something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So I'm good about that, I think, on the number six.
Yeah. Number six was not near as interesting. It was just a visual experience of a customer service window for some website that was scrolling down on the screen of my computer. And it was scrolling because I was getting it to scroll down, but I don't even remember anything else about it. So it was one of those like pop-up windows for like a chat or something. But at first you have a million options that are just, like an attempt to handle you with some automatic question and answer system. And you can scroll down to get the various questions and see if you can select one.
So is the customer service windowness of this experience part of your experience? Or is that would be in the real world, I could say this is a customer service window, but what my experience was of whatever it is that's being displayed scrolling down. moving downwards.
Yeah. If it's possible, I think if it's possible it's for the customer serviceness of it to be present than it was. I
It's
would agree.
definitely possible. So,
I would,
it
yeah,
could be that I absolutely know that this is a customer service window, and I'm
yeah,
scrolling it down, and I'm seeing the
yeah,
customer service window going down. I'm not trying to talk you out of that,
yeah,
but I think what you said was consonant with several different descriptions, and I'm trying to figure out which one it is. So, what you said was that there's a lot of different windows that have been that I'm up, and I'm scrolling down through them, and it doesn't, at the moment of the beep, it doesn't, as far as my experience is concerned, it doesn't matter a whit whether it's a customer service window or a buy this product window. I'm just scrolling down through it.
yeah,
Or it could be, well, I've noticed this is a customer service window and I'm scrolling the customer service window down.
yeah. I'd say I was aware that it's customer service window and that the scrolling is the scrolling of the
Okay.
options for the customer service questions.
Right.
Um,
And does it, so scrolling down, does that mean that this window is going downwards on the screen?
now that the text within that window is scrolling so that, more options appear that you could select. But the window itself is not moving.
So I'm watching text scroll downwards within a window, within a customer service window.
Yeah, text and lines, like boxes with the text.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I don't know what those are. I'm not reading them. I'm
yeah.
noticing their form, I guess. I
Mm,
recognize as this the kind of shit that happens
yeah,
in customer service boxes or whatever.
yeah.
And I'm
Mhm.
scrolling down through it and watching it, seeing it go by.
Yes.
And I'm doing it. I'm causing this to happen. And
Yes.
is that in my experience, or is that
Um,
so automatic that I'm just watching it go?
maybe barely, but not prominently.
So more prominently, I'm watching it scroll downwards.
Yes.
Probably I'm understanding myself to be making it happen.
Yes.
But it's not, I don't feel my fingers on the screen. I don't feel my arm moving.
Yeah.
It's no doubt all that stuff is happening. But
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
So my experience is of seeing text scrolling downwards on my screen. And I guess I should say seeing customer service like text scrolling down on my screen.
On this particular box or window, it's like it's a pop-up window that contains the customer service options or chat, but that doesn't cover the whole screen of my computer. It's only it covers part of the screen on the right side, and that's what I'm focusing on. I'm not looking at the rest of the screen.
And so as far as my experience is concerned, is the rest of the screen there, or have I sort of just obliterated that for,
It's in the weeds.
okay. So for the most part of my experience, I am watching text scroll down, watching customer service-y text scroll down within this window.
Yeah.
And in the weeds is my action of making it happen
Yeah.
and the rest of the screen and no doubt
Yeah.
the political situation and the weather and the rest of the other stuff, which is
That's not even in the weeds. That's like,
that's beyond the weeds.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mm,
All right. Then I think I'm good.
okay. We went through all six today.
Yeah, we did. They were more or
Oh,
less more straightforward than some, and I think we're getting more efficient at talking about them.
yeah.
So the future,
Yes.
I have sent Evan a beeper,
Right.
and he's supposed to get that tomorrow. And Yes, and you are going to Italy
on
soon.
Monday. On Monday.
Okay. So there, I guess we got two issues here. One, do we want to continue to sample with Gualtiero, the three of us, while Gualtiero is in Italy? That's one question. And the other question is, do we want to get started with Evan?
We can definitely get started with Evan.
I'll leave that up to Evan about that. And then about the sampling with Gualtiero,
Yes.
do we want to continue having a few more days of that? And if so, do we want to pick a date now? And
So here's what I say. I would say I am pretty satisfied with at least the samples we got for the time being, but this has been an extremely stimulating experience, and I have now built it into a book project on consciousness that has really come together in the last few months, and it does involve talking about descriptive experience sampling, my own experience with it, maybe what we will learn from doing it with Evan, and also including the stuff that I'm doing when I'm sleeping, and which I will continue to do on my own and to some degree at least. And so I think it might be really helpful if I could continue to borrow the beeper, even if we don't do any more sessions like this, interviews like this, at least for the time being, because if and when I do get to write this book, or at least the relevant parts of it, it might be helpful to like repeat some of these deep experience, or like do more descriptive experience sampling just to refresh my memory, or like see if I experience other things, or I don't know, or like maybe see if some of these things happen again, or have fresh data. I don't know. It's just a possibility that I would like to have open, if I could keep the beeper for a while.
yeah, so what I would say about that is I think it would be interesting to sample with Gualtiero after we sample with Evan. And so I have no idea what the sampling with Evan is going to be like, but the chances are pretty good that it's going to be different from Gualtiero. And
Yeah.
that's not because I know anything about him, but only because people are generally different. And I think it is enlightening, I guess I would say, to
hmm
to watch it from the other side and then to come back and watch it from the first side again. I think that might be enlightening. I think you might find that enlightening, and
Yeah.
I might find that enlightening.
Yeah. Okay.
And that might be the same issue that you were describing about keeping the beaver and trying it later on, except I'm making it a little bit more concrete by saying that later on would be after Evan.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Because we've debated things like how present things are and what's the difference between a process and a content, and what's directly apprehended, and we have beat that subject around,
Yeah.
batted that subject back and forth, and I think we can. I think it's likely that the conversations that we have with Evan will cast some light on that. And I'm not clairvoyant. I don't have any specific reason to believe, but I think his experience will be somewhat different in that regard, and that difference will provide a perspective that will untie a knot in the conversations that we've been having. I think that's likely, or at least possible. And so I think we ought to sort of plan for that. So I think both of us are suggesting that what we really ought to do is we ought to do our Evan thing for a while, and then we ought to consider the possibility of coming back and doing some more Gualtiero and Lauren thing.
Yeah, sounds good.
Does that sound like a plan for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I have time, I might apply myself to making the first half of a Gualtiero website. We can. I've got a couple of things in the queue ahead of that, but we would. If I do, I will let you know. So concretely, I will contact Evan and say the beeper's supposed to be there on tomorrow, and we could plan on meeting on Friday the 4th in the afternoon on his time, and would be like 9 o'clock my time in the morning on the 4th, which I think is 11 o'clock your time, something like that. And that was like his 6 o'clock in the evening on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Deal. Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Lauren.
See you later.
Bye.